His latest pager attack most reminded me of, just because of the cleverness, really, was the Stuxnet virus, which they used to, along with the CIA, they had some help from the CIA on this one, we think, to basically disable Iran's nuclear enrichment program for a while. They got this computer worm, type of, a worm virus. These are all metaphors, of course, but they implanted a program onto onto a flash drive and managed to get it into an Iranian computer at a conference abroad, a laptop, an Iranian guy scientist. And from there, it kind of just spread, and it spread across the world, not just in Iran. This worm, it like a virus, it sort of spread from laptop to laptop to computer system to computer system. But it was encoded so that the only time it reacted was when it came across a specific Siemens computer system that operated these uranium centrifuges that spin around to purify uranium for nuclear purposes. And so it lay dormant for months until it finally made its way into the system, when it suddenly sort of sent all these centrifuges berserk and put them out of control. Incredible technology, of course, here used to very, very deadly ends, including, the deaths of children. Let's not forget that.
No one really doubts that Israel was behind the exploding pages in Lebanon, partly because they were targeted at one of Israel's main enemies, Hezbollah, and partly it's because Israel has a long history of using technology in surprise attacks. Richard Spencer reported from Lebanon and the Middle East for a long time for The Times, and we can speak to him now. Morning, Richard.
Good morning.
This has the feel of the work of Mossad, doesn't it?
Absolutely. If you combine the targeting, the scale, and the methodology, this incredible use of, I say high tech. We're not talking AI here, though they do use AI in some of their other operations. But the use of the technology available to strike their targets is very distinctive. Mossad fingerprint here.
And you've written a great piece in the Times. It's online at the minute. People can go and read it. But give us a couple of highlights from it, because highlights in the sense of the sorts of things Mossad have done in the past that point to their ingenuity, I suppose, when it comes to counterintelligence.
Yeah, so we all know that sort of Mossad has a hit program. It's operated for decades now. Fairly uninhibited about going to foreign countries and taking out targets that they want to take out. They did that with, for example, the people responsible for the Munich Olympics massacre in 1972. They spent the best part of 2 decades sending Mossad hit squads to European countries, other countries, and finding the men they consider responsible, shooting them, blowing them up with car bombs, all sorts. But in the last couple of decades, they've really moved on in terms of their technology. And the examples I give, the most startling one was the assassination of the Iranian chief nuclear scientist, military nuclear scientist, a guy called Brigadier General Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. And he was driving along, or being driven along, towards his sort of weekend retreat outside Tehran in late 2020, and he was shot by a machine gun. And the details when they first came out, I think anyone believed them because they were so far-fetched. The Iranians said that he had been intercepted by a remote-controlled machine gun mounted on a pickup truck that was parked in his path, and opened fire, apparently controlled by satellite communications. And in fact, we didn't believe that at the time, but it was true. That's exactly what the Israelis had managed to do. They'd managed to infiltrate an entire machine gun mounted on a pickup truck, stick it in the road, and operate it remotely. Pretty extraordinary. But the thing that this most reminded me of, this latest pager attack, most reminded me of, just because of the cleverness, really, was the Stuxnet virus, which they used to, along with the CIA, they had some help from the CIA on this one, we think, to basically disable Iran's nuclear enrichment program for a while. They got this computer worm, type of, a worm virus. These are all metaphors, of course, but they implanted a program onto a flash drive and managed to get it into an Iranian computer at a conference abroad, a laptop, an Iranian guy scientist. And from there, it kind of just spread, and it spread across the world, not just in Iran. This worm, like a virus, it sort of spread from laptop to laptop to computer system to computer system. But it was encoded so that the only time it reacted was when it came across a specific Siemens computer system that operated these uranium centrifuges that spin around to purify uranium for nuclear purposes. And so it lay dormant for months until it finally made its way into the system, when it suddenly sort of sent all these centrifuges berserk and put them out of control. Incredible technology, of course, here used to very, very deadly ends, including, the deaths of children. Let's not forget that.
Well, no, exactly. But I suppose that Mossad used to be seen as the final word in intelligence sophistication, and that took a knock, that reputation, on October the 7th, didn't it? It's seen as it was an intelligence service that had been caught out. And I wonder how much of some of the operations they're now running, when they're taking people out in Beirut, they're taking people out, as you say, in Iran, and now this, some of it is to show the world and show their enemies that they are still a high-end intelligence service.
Yeah, I mean, October the 7th, the full story hasn't been told, I don't think, and may never be, in terms of what went wrong between the intelligence agencies. Of course, Mossad isn't the only Israeli intelligence agency. There's Shin Bet, which is the internal intelligence agency. There's military intelligence. October the 17th seems to have fallen between the cracks, mainly of Shin Bet and military intelligence. I think you're right in a broader sense that Israel wants to show that it is still it's still I mean, it sounds a cliche, but a tough nut to crack. That it did have this terrible failing on October the 7th, and it wants to show that it's had terrible failing since, in a sense, and it's had this it's had this year-long war which has not eradicated Hamas, and it's getting a lot of stick both internally and externally for not achieving its goals despite the huge loss of life in Gaza. So there is definitely a political motivation to show we're still on it, if you like. There's a particular thing. I mean, this must have been planned for months, this operation, but it is also worth remembering that Hezbollah 3 weeks ago sent a salvo of missiles into Israel in revenge for the killing of its own military commander in Beirut, Fuad Shukr, by an Israeli missile strike. And they were targeting Mossad HQ just north of Tel Aviv. They didn't apparently hit it, but the missiles were targeting it. So there's also a bit of a we can do to you more than you can do to us going on here.
I'm sure that's right. And then, as we heard from someone from Shin Bet, he's disappointed that they're not going to follow us up with something more, although they may well do that, and Hezbollah may well respond with something else, and thus the escalation goes. Richard, great to speak to you as ever. I always learn something. Thank you for joining us.
All right, thanks a lot.
That's Richard Spencer there. He's a great Times correspondent, lived in Lebanon for a long time and reported on the Middle East for the Times.